I should have walked away the moment she made that joke. That awful, half-laughed, half-serious jab. What if you're not the father? Like it was some edgy, playful thing to say after we just finished assembling the baby's crib together in our one-bedroom apartment outside Dayton. I laugh with her, because that's what you do when you're trying not to crumble. I'm Chijiste Givionte. I manage inventory for a distribution center just outside Tip City. Long hours, steady pay. Not flashy work, but it kept us comfortable. I used to come home with dust in my lungs and pride in my chest. We were planning for something big, or so I thought. The twist? I actually believed her when she said it was just a joke. That maybe the hormones, or the stress, or whatever else people say when they're trying to excuse behavior that doesn't sit right, had just gotten the best of her. But I'd been noticing things for months. Things I wanted so badly to ignore. She stopped letting me rub her belly at night. She changed the lock screen on her phone. Not once, but 3 times in 2 weeks. She started making up errands, long ones, always right after getting a text from that one coworker she swore was gay. And her mom, of all people, started avoiding eye contact when I dropped by. That woman used to offer me leftover lasagna, like I was already her son-in-law. Now she barely offered hello. The real slap in the face came when I suggested we get a DNA test. I said, to rule out any medical complications. I made it sound practical. She didn't buy it. Her face changed. She laughed it off at first, called me paranoid, said I was ruining the magic. But I saw something behind her eyes that day. Panic, like I just cracked something wide open. So I did what any man who's tired of being gaslit does. I bought the test behind her back. I mailed it in. Waited. You ever hold an envelope knowing that it's going to change your entire life? That kind of paper doesn't feel like paper. It feels like a loaded gun. The result? 0%. Zero. Not a maybe. Not a slim chance. Not even a damn decimal. I'm not the father. And you want to know the worst part? I still wanted to believe there was some explanation. Some chance the lab had screwed up. But she didn't deny it. Not once. She just got real quiet, like a guilty kid caught sneaking out past curfew. Her hands shook. She asked me if I planned to leave. I didn't even answer. I just stared at her, tried to remember when exactly she became a stranger wearing the face of someone I once loved. She'd lied to me every single day for the better part of a year. Let me rub her back when she was nauseous. Let me pick out names, paint walls, budget for formula. I was building a future while she was building a fantasy with someone else. But here's the twist. I'm suing. That's right. I'm suing to remove my name from that birth certificate. Because in Ohio, if you're on the birth certificate, you're the legal father, even if science says otherwise. And I'm not paying 18 years of support for a lie. I may be heartbroken, but I'm not a fool. So that's where I'm at. Living in my buddy's basement for now, surrounded by boxes of baby gear I no longer need. My world is cracking apart, but I'm not standing still anymore. The day I got the test results, I left the envelope sitting on the kitchen table. Didn't even open it right away. I knew what was in it. Truth doesn't need to be read when it's already been screaming at you for months. I just stood there, staring at it like it might explode or maybe beg for forgiveness. It did neither. She came home from work like it was any other Wednesday. Brought home takeout. Thai. My favorite. Probably hoping to keep the peace without realizing the war had already ended and she'd lost. I told her I knew. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She just deflated. Like a kid caught red-handed and too exhausted to lie. She admitted it had started at the office. Of course, those late budget meetings and team dinners that always left her phone face down on the couch. She didn't say his name, but I already knew it. Jeff, from HR, the guy who wore loafers with no socks and called everyone buddy. I'd seen the way he looked at her at the company picnic last fall, the way he lingered a little too long when handing her a drink. I told myself I was imagining it. Funny how hindsight always feels like it's laughing at you. She said it just happened. That's how she put it, like she tripped and fell into infidelity. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Instead, I asked the question I never thought I'd have to say out loud. Does he know the baby's his? She looked away. That was answer enough. The next morning, I called my lawyer. Told her everything. She told me what I feared, that unless I acted fast, I'd be locked into child support whether the kid was mine or not. I needed to file a rescission of paternity and petition the court to remove my name. I had to prove I'd been deceived. And here's the part that still keeps me up at night. She fought it. She wanted me to stay on the birth certificate. Said I was the better man. Said I'd make a better father. That it didn't matter what DNA said. That love was what counted. That I could still be dad. That word used to mean something sacred to me. Now it felt like a leash. But it wasn't just her. Her mother got involved too. The same woman who used to knit blankets for me at Christmas and call me her favorite. She cornered me at the grocery store, right there next to the bulk rice bins, and told me I was being cruel, that men don't run away from responsibility. I almost laughed. Responsibility? I'd been shouldering this entire relationship while her daughter was out playing house with Jeff from HR. Then came the kicker. 2 weeks after I filed, Jeff's wife emailed me. Yeah, you read that right. Turns out, he had a whole family of his own. A wife, 2 kids, a golden retriever, the whole Midwest Stability starter pack. And he told his wife he was mentoring my girlfriend through a tough season. Meanwhile, she was pregnant with his child and calling me the coward. It all started unraveling after that. Jeff's wife filed for divorce. My ex's job suddenly restructured, which I'm guessing is code for don't sleep with your coworkers, especially when they're already married. And my case started to gain momentum in court. But none of that felt like justice. Not really. It just felt like cleanup. You'd think after all that, the affair, the test results, the lies, she'd back down. Maybe offer some remorse, something human. But no, she doubled down. 3 days after court accepted my filing, I came home to find a handwritten letter taped to the apartment door. It was in her handwriting, loopy neat, like it always was on birthday cards and grocery lists. I opened it, half expecting an apology. What I got instead was a guilt trip wrapped in flowery stationery. She said I was abandoning the baby, that this wasn't about biology, it was about love, that I owed her child something for being there when he was just a flutter on an ultrasound. She actually wrote that. Like me standing next to her in that clinic meant I'd signed some blood oath. I sat there on the stairs, reading the note over and over until my hands went cold. The neighbors passed by like nothing was wrong, carrying groceries, chatting about weather. Meanwhile, I was reading proof that someone I'd planned my whole life around didn't just betray me. She expected me to pretend it never happened. And here's the part one still can't believe. The baby's crib? Still in the bedroom. She didn't move it, didn't pack it. Still had the little hand-painted wooden sign I'd made hanging above it. Welcome home, little one. I made that sign with my own damn hands in the garage after work. Sanded it smooth. Painted it while she slept. I remember crying while writing his name on it, thinking I'd finally built something that mattered. That name? It wasn't mine. Not really. Just some placeholder she let me believe in. But I left it there. I couldn't bring myself to take it down. I moved into a studio apartment off Wilmington Pike. Small. Quiet. Smelled like old carpet and broken dreams. I didn't take much, a suitcase, a few tools, and a drawer full of documents now stamped with legal jargon I never thought I'd need. The hardest thing to pack was my toothbrush. Don't ask me why. Just something about leaving that behind felt final in a way even the court papers didn't. Friends started reaching out. Some offered support. Others asked if the rumors were true. Word gets around fast in a town like Kettering. One guy, former co-worker, had the nerve to ask if I'd really leave my own kid just because of a technicality. A technicality. That's what they call it now when you find out you've been used. And through all this, Jeff, not a word, not a message, not even a smirk in my direction. It's like he disappeared the second things stopped being convenient. Funny how these types always evaporate when accountability shows up. I started keeping a journal, not because I wanted to document everything, but because I needed somewhere to put the parts of me that still hoped this was just a nightmare. I wrote about the first time I heard the heartbeat, about the way she cried when we picked out onesies, about how I spent hours researching how to be a good dad, podcasts, books, YouTube videos, all wasted. But you want to know what hurt most? The realization that deep down, I still love the version of her I thought was real. You ever realize the villain in your story isn't just the person who hurt you, but the version of yourself that let it happen? That hit me one morning standing in line at the Speedway gas station on Stroop Road. I was holding a black coffee and a pack of batteries I didn't need. Just something to do with my hands. The guy in front of me was cradling a toddler, and she reached for a candy bar on a rack. He didn't scold her, just smiled and bought it. And for some reason, that tiny gesture cracked something in me. Because I wanted that. Not the candy bar, the normalcy, the ease. I've been gearing my whole life toward being a good man, a steady man. And the moment I finally stepped into the role of father, even just emotionally, life sucker punched me in the throat. And that's when Jeff became more than a name. He became a symbol. Jeff from HR, the guy who was always organizing chili cook-offs and sending all staff emails with little smiley faces. The kind of guy who starts sentences with not to be that guy, but, and always ends up being that guy. I met him twice. Once in the break room, where he called me her rock. And again at a holiday party, where he joked that we had the same taste in music and women. I should have known then. I started digging. I'm not proud of it, but I did. burner email accounts, old social media posts. And let me tell you, Jeff left a trail like a dropped ice cream cone on hot pavement. Turns out, I wasn't the first guy he'd done this to. There was another, a temp named Jason, who, according to a now-deleted Facebook rant, had found Jeff texting his girlfriend too. The pattern was always the same: charm, sabotage, ghost. He was the kind of man who poke holes in other people's lives and then watch them sink from the safety of his own. And her, my ex, she was still posting ultrasound pictures, nursery progress, quotes about new beginnings, all without once mentioning the father. It was like I'd been erased, like my presence was a draft she decided not to save. What she didn't know, what Jeff didn't know, is that I had receipts. Not just the DNA results, but photos, logs, even security footage from our old apartment's entryway. I wasn't building a revenge file. I was building insurance. Because if they tried to come for anything, money, custody, reputation, I was going to be ready. In the middle of all this, I got a call. For her father. Yeah, he said he'd heard what happened. Said he didn't condone her choices. Said he was embarrassed. But here's the part I'll never forget. He asked if I still planned to stick around for the baby. As if love was some kind of subscription you could renew, even after the trial expired. I told him I was stepping away, that I hoped the child would be loved, but I wouldn't be part of the lie. And he just sighed and said, I figured. Not I'm sorry. Not she was wrong. Just I figured. Like he knew all along and was just waiting for me to find out too. That night, I lay on the floor of my apartment, mattress still wrapped in plastic, and stared at the ceiling, wondering how many people had known and said nothing. The silence said more than betrayal ever could. There's this moment I keep coming back to. It's stupid, really. A Sunday afternoon at Lowe's. We were standing in front of paint swatches. She was holding two samples up to the light, Crib Cloud and Morning Whisper. I remember thinking how happy she looked. Focused. Intentional. Like a woman building something solid. Something real. I asked which one she liked better, and she said whichever made the room feel warmer. That's what I thought we were doing, making a home. Turns out we were painting a set. After everything, after the test, and the court filing, and the quiet chaos of moving out, I found myself sitting in my truck, staring at that same Lowe's parking lot. I'd pulled in without meaning to. Muscle memory, I guess. But there it was, the place where I'd once stood thinking I was becoming a father. And now, I was just a guy with receipts and rage, trying to prove he didn't belong in someone else's story. The legal side got messy, eh? Her lawyer tried to argue I'd assumed parental responsibility, which in our state means I had shown intent to parent. By the time I spent driving her to appointments, putting together a crib, attending a birth class, all of it could legally obligate me, test or no test. Intent. That word stuck in my ribs like a splinter. Because yeah, I did intend to be a dad. I meant every late-night grocery run, every stupid baby name list, every time I pressed my ear to her stomach and imagined hearing a future. But that intention was based on a lie. And you don't get to build a life on fraud and expect me to pay for the foundation. Meanwhile, people started picking sides. Some mutual friends, well, former friends, said I was overreacting, that a child was still a child, that I should step up anyway. One guy even said, what's a little DNA in the big picture of love? I almost choked. You ever notice how the people telling you to forgive and move on are never the ones cleaning up the wreckage? But not everyone turned on me. My sister called from Louisville. She's got 3 kids and a husband who actually shows up. She didn't say much, just said she was proud of me for not folding. Then she said the thing that finally cracked my composure. It's okay to grieve a future that wasn't real. I didn't even realize I was grieving until she said it. It wasn't just a child. It was the version of me I thought I was becoming. The family I believed I had. The warmth I tried to build. I'd spent months being someone else's plan B and didn't even know it. And now, I was learning to breathe again without carrying someone else's expectations on my back. About a week after my name got removed from the pending birth certificate, a temporary ruling still under appeal, I went back to the old apartment. Not to see her. God, no. I left my grandfather's watch in the drawer of the hallway table. It was the only thing of his I still had, and I wasn't about to let it rot in the ruins of that mess. She wasn't home. The building manager let me in, said nothing, just handed me the spare key like he'd seen this movie a dozen times already. Maybe he had. Apartments carry ghosts, and this one was full of mine. The second I stepped inside, everything hit me at once. The smell of that lavender detergent she liked. The sight of the baby books still lined up on the shelf. The damn ultrasound photo still pinned to the fridge with a Buckeye magnet, smiling back at me like some twisted trophy. I opened the drawer. There it was. The old Omega with the cracked face and worn strap. My grandfather wore it every day, even in the hospice bed. He used to tell me it didn't matter if the time was right, only that it kept ticking. I held it in my palm for a while, letting it remind me of the kind of man I used to want to be: steady, loyal, reliable. All the things she made feel like a punchline. Before I left, I caught a glimpse of the nursery. She'd repainted. The warm yellow we picked together had been covered with a cool gray. Modern, impersonal, like it was curated for Instagram, not a child. The crib was gone. The sign I made gone too. And just like that, it was like I'd never existed. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept turning the watch over in my hands, over and over, until the ticking filled the whole room. I realized something then. Love isn't what people say. It's not the gestures or the smiles or even the memories. It's what you do when no one's watching. It's the hours you give without receipt. And it's what you choose when everything falls apart. She chose herself. And maybe I should have done that sooner too. But I'm not built like her. I don't discard. I endure. That's both my flaw and my strength. So I started writing a letter. Not to her. Not even to the baby. To myself. A kind of time capsule for the man I'll be in 5 years. To remind him who he was when the dust was still settling. To remind him that he didn't fold. That he still knew how to stand. The judge called it legal paternity. Not emotional. Not biological. Just ink on paper. That's what she said, like it was supposed to comfort me. That the law had to treat me like I was the father unless I could prove I'd been deceived and that I didn't knowingly accept the role. Like fatherhood was a subscription you accidentally clicked and now had to keep paying for. I sat in that courtroom in downtown Dayton. 6th floor, family division, cold air, and chairs that squeaked, listening to lawyers argue over my intent. That word again. That damn word. They had screenshots of me assembling a crib. Photos of me at a baby shower I didn't want to have but showed up for anyway. Texts where I called myself dad-to-be. They used my love as evidence against me. And she just sat there. No tears this time. Just calm, collected, like someone who knew she'd spun the truth long enough for the court to get tangled in it too. Her lawyer kept saying things like Mr. Miller demonstrated ongoing commitment and assumed financial and emotional responsibility. As if that wasn't based entirely on a lie she never corrected. I wanted to stand up and shout. Ask if anyone else saw how insane this was. Ask if intent was still valid after betrayal. But I didn't. I sat still. I let my lawyer talk. Because rage doesn't win in court, paperwork does. In the hallway after, her mother approached me. She had the nerve to touch my arm like we were still family. She said she hoped we could all move on and be mature about this. I looked at her and didn't say a thing. Because anything I said would have come out as fire. You know what they don't tell you about betrayal? It's not the act itself that breaks you. It's the courtroom after. The depositions. The affidavits. Watching a judge try to quantify who you are based on calendar entries and baby photos. There's something surreal about being forced to legally separate from a child that was never yours. The court doesn't issue grief counseling. They issue orders. And I followed every one. Every form. Every deadline. Every copy delivered by certified mail. Because if they were going to reduce me to paperwork, then I was going to become the most thorough damn piece of paper they'd ever seen. That night, I went home and shredded the last ultrasound printout. I kept it out of guilt, like maybe it wasn't the child's fault. And maybe it isn't. But it wasn't mine either. And that was the part nobody wanted to say out loud. I wasn't a father. On paper. In blood. In truth. And I never really had been. You want to know what finally broke me? It wasn't the courtroom. Not the betrayal. Not even seeing that ultrasound photo one last time before it hit the shredder. It was standing in line at Kroger and catching my reflection in the freezer door, standing there with a microwave dinner and that same tired look I swore I'd never wear. The look my own father had when he finally stopped pretending my mom might come back. And in that moment, I saw it. I'd become the ghost of the man I was trying not to be. I always said I'd break the cycle. I'd be the guy who stayed, who built something solid. The guy who changed diapers and packed lunches and gave better than he got. But you can't build on a lie. And worse, you can't grieve something fake without starting to question everything real. For weeks, I kept thinking about the nights I'd sit by the crib. The one we ordered off Amazon. The one I assembled with 2 stripped screws and half a beer in my hand. Imagining the life we'd have. That version of me? He was a good man. A hopeful man. But he was living inside someone else's fiction. And the problem with being the hero in someone else's story is you don't get to choose the ending. I got texts from her friends. Passive-aggressive things like, hope you're healing, or don't punish the baby for her mistake. as if I'd slammed the door on a child I never asked for, never created, never even named. The narrative had already turned me into the villain. And she got to be the struggling single mom, brave, resilient, full of quiet strength. They love a story where the woman overcomes the man's betrayal. Doesn't matter if the script's reversed. People rarely rewrite it once it's told a certain way. I stopped responding, deleted social media, burned what few photos I had left. She'd taken enough from me. I wasn't giving her space in my head too. But you want to know the twist? A coworker of hers, a woman I barely knew, messaged me privately a few nights later. Said she knew what had happened. That this wasn't the first time my ex had pulled something like this. That 2 jobs ago, in Cincinnati, she'd been caught lying about another surprise pregnancy that magically went away when the guy didn't take the bait. She said my ex had a way of weaving fantasy in a fact, of making you feel chosen, then trapped. That I wasn't the first, just the one who stuck around the longest. That hit me hard, not because it changed the facts, but because it confirmed the deepest, ugliest fear I hadn't been able to say out loud. I wasn't special. I was convenient. The day the final ruling came through, I didn't celebrate. I didn't even exhale. Just stood in the kitchen of my new place in Riverside, holding the court letter like it might vanish if I blinked too hard. It said what I already knew. I am not the legal father. No obligación. No child support. No tais. Just a single-page decision that unraveled months of chaos and years of hope. I sat down at the kitchen table, same one we used to eat at before I took it with me. It still had a faint scratch from the night she dragged her keys across it during an argument. I used to want to sand it down. Now I leave it there, a reminder. And then, for reasons I still don't fully understand, I cried. Not loud, not messy, just silent tears dripping into a mug of cold coffee. The kind of crying you do when there's no one left to perform for. Not even yourself. I didn't cry for her. Not even for the baby. I cried for the version of me that died somewhere along the way. The one who believed that showing up would always be enough. The one who thought being the steady one made you unshakable. That guy? He didn't make it out. What survived is someone leaner, quieter, wiser, maybe, but with a kind of wisdom that tastes like rust. I got a voicemail from her that night. Her voice was calm, controlled, rehearsed, almost. She said she respected my choice and hoped I'd find peace. Then she added something like, I know you were the better man, even if the outcome says otherwise. And I just sat there, letting those words rot in the air. Better man? That's the thing. Being the better man still doesn't get you the child, or the family, or even the truth. Sometimes it just means you're the one who walks away with more scars and fewer stories people believe. The next morning, I boxed up the last of the baby stuff. The onesies, the stuffed elephant, even that damn baby book with the empty pages. Took it all to a donation center on Woodman Drive. The woman behind the counter didn't ask questions, just smiled, thanked me, and placed the box on a shelf behind her. And just like that, my fatherhood, or whatever version of it I had, became a second-hand story on someone else's shelf. I drove home with the windows down. First time in months the air felt like mine again. But even freedom comes with splinters. After the dust settled, after the court dates and shredded papers and the return of silence to my life, I thought I'd feel lighter. I really did. Like a man stepping out of deep water, gasping at freedom. But I didn't feel light. I felt hollow. There's this thing they don't warn you about. The grief that comes without a funeral. No croce, no folded flat. Just the steady hum of days that look normal on the outside and feel off on the inside. I started waking up before my alarm. Not with energy, just this constant edge, like I was waiting for a sound that never came. No crying baby. No soft shuffle of feet from the nursery. Just the refrigerator humming and my own breath, heavy in the quiet. I began going for long walks through the Five Oaks neighborhood. There's this old bridge over a dried-up creek. Nothing remarkable, really, just rusted railings and graffiti that keeps changing. But something about it called to me. Every evening, I'd stand there and look down like I was waiting for a version of me to crawl out of the shadows and explain what the hell just happened. The worst part of being lied to like that, you start doubting your ability to see truth anywhere. You flinch at kindness. You second-guess memories. You catch yourself asking if the laughter was ever real, or if you just laughed because you needed to believe it was. One night, I bumped into a neighbor I barely knew. Older guy, wore worn boots and a Reds cap. He looked at me and said, "You got that look, like someone left the fight but forgot to turn off the lights." And I just nodded because there was nothing left to explain. Sometimes you don't need advice. You just need to be seen. I kept the watch. The one from my grandfather. Still ticking, still stubborn. I wear it every day now. Not because it keeps perfect time, but because it reminds me that things can still work even if they're cracked. She moved on, or at least she made it look that way. Instagram posts, mom life hashtags, inspirational quotes, the carefully curated portrait of someone who came through the fire and emerged stronger. But strength isn't how loud you post. It's how quietly you rebuild. And me? I'm still rebuilding, brick by bloody brick. But I don't carry her anymore, or him, or the shame. I carry the lesson. And a lesson is this. Just because you love something doesn't mean you owe it your destruction. Some nights, I still drive past the old apartment. Not to spy, not even out of habit anymore. Just, I don't know, maybe to remind myself that it was real. That I was real. That everything I gave wasn't just some ghost story told in my own head. You ever lose something that was never truly yours and still feel the ache as if it were torn from you? That ache stays. It doesn't scream anymore. It just hums, low and constant, like a quiet engine running in the background of your life. You learn to live around it, not through it, around it. I'm 42 now, work in regional logistics, not glamorous, but steady. I've started dating again. Nothing serious, just talking, listening. Try not to flinch every time someone mentions kids or commitment or blended families. People come with so many pieces already cracked, and I've learned to handle things gently, including myself. I keep that letter from the court in a drawer, beneath a folded copy of my grandfather's obituary and the ultrasound photo I didn't shred. Couldn't do it. Not because I want to remember her, but because that little blur on the screen, whoever he becomes, still deserved a beginning, even if I wasn't meant to be part of his story. And maybe that's the hardest part, knowing you were ready to give everything to someone who only ever saw you as temporary. But I stayed. I showed up. I was there, even when everything turned out to be a lie. That matters, even if no one claps for it, even if no one writes it down, because it means I haven't given up on being the kind of man who stays, even when staying almost broke me. That's the version of myself I held on to, the one who tried, who loved without proof, who walked away with his spine intact, even if his heart was splintered in the process. I didn't get the family, or the title, or the kid, but I kept my name, and I'm still here.